Hi there. In this video, we're going to just get everything set up for this course so it all runs nice and smoothly. The first thing you'll do is download the exercise files. There will be a link on the page here to go off and download those so you can play along. You don't have to, but obviously it'd be easy if you had the exercise files and work along with me. The next thing to do is just getting your workspace. Like, it depends on what I mean by workspace is just what Photoshop looks like. Sometimes it looks like this, sometimes it looks like this, sometimes it looks completely different. Let's everyone right now get it all looking the same by going to Window, get under Workspace, and let's click on Essentials Default. It's kind of, yeah, that's the basic kind of layout for Photoshop. Now yours won't have this group of images because that's specific for me, but what you might do is it might still be looking different. You can go to Window, Workspace, and click on Reset Essentials. That just kind of like rejigs it to make sure it's kind of as it was out of the box. That is quite handy if later on you're dragging this and it somehow gets connected to this thing over here and this bit gets dragged out. So if you ever get lost like this, you're like, man, everything's everywhere. Just go back up to Window, go to Workspace, and go to Reset Essentials, and it goes all back to its happy home. The other thing you might do, this is more optional. I have to do it when I'm teaching because on a Mac, it's under Photoshop CC, Preferences, General. If you're on a PC, it's under Edit, and it's way down the bottom here somewhere. Okay, so go to Preferences, General, and you might click both of these, or it says Reset Preferences on Quit and Reset All Warning dialog boxes. That's just going to kind of like, if you've made any changes throughout the software, it's going to kind of reset it back to the defaults. You might not do that. I do it so that yours looks exactly like mine. If you are kind of a reasonable user of Photoshop, you might just leave that because you might have made some changes and you don't want to, I guess, wreck your changes. The one thing to note though, if you reset your preferences, it's on quit. It means you got to go to, on a PC, go to File, Quit Photoshop, or on a Mac, it's under here, Photoshop, Quit. Just quit it and open it back up, and only then will those preferences be redone. Next thing to note is I'm using CC 2018, okay, that's the version of Photoshop. If you're using an earlier version, okay, you might find some of the features won't work. Now, what features won't work? There'll be a few of them, okay? If you are using, say, CS6 or CS5, which is quite old now, 90% of this course will still work. So should you do it? You should. There's going to be a few things that don't work, and that's just, I guess, you need to upgrade to the newer version, but there'll be lots of useful stuff in here still for you. But double check. You can go to Help and go to Updates. Just make sure you've got the latest version. One other thing you might notice, the difference between yours and mine, is you might not see this 3D option here, and a couple of like little weird things under Filter and Render. We're not going to cover them in this kind of essentials course, so it's no big deal. But if you are finding later on after this course, you're like, man, why there was 3D in Dan's version and not in mine? It's probably just your version of Photoshop it's not your Photoshop, it's your laptop or your computer. It's probably using what's called a 32-bit operating system, and it just won't work with 3D. So Photoshop can kind of come in a couple of flavors, and it'll do its best on your operating system. So if you've got an old crappy operating system, really old poor laptop, fans are coming on, it's all very stressed, it might not do these things just because your computer just can't handle it. So you might have to upgrade the same version of Photoshop, but you might have to get a new upgraded laptop or computer. All right, the last thing to cover is the use of the images in this course. So you got the exercise files, you can totally use them to practice and follow along with me. But if you want to use them in your, say, portfolio or in some of your actual work, okay, your professional work, you need to go and license the images. Now, I've got all these images from Adobe stock. It's stock.adobe.com. I pay a monthly fee and I get 10 images. You can start your 30-day trial and get 10 images. Okay, but you got to go and find those images and pay for them to use them. Or just go and switch them out. So do the examples with me and then find some other free stock library images to use for your portfolio or your commercial work. Great places to get free stuff from is a couple here. So Pixels is really cool, okay? And yeah, just good quality, high quality, free to use images. There's that, there's freeimages.com. There is unsplash.com is really cool as well. Okay, really awesome images. Where's another place? deathofthestockphoto.com. Okay, same thing here. Okay, you're allowed to use them commercially. Another way to use it is Google Images, right? You can't just do a search. You can't just go, I need a picture of a shoe and just steal stuff from here. Okay, what you can do though is you can figure out which are allowed to be used. So you can go to Tools and you can go to I do a couple of things. I make sure I want to find large images, so good quality ones. I want to find usage rights, and I want to go this one here, labeled for reuse with modification. Okay, this I could use, but I wouldn't be able to mess with it in Photoshop. So I want this license, and it will cut it down to, the list gets quite small. Okay, but you can see large images that I'm allowed to use in my work. Okay, so that's a way of getting around image licensing, or if you've got the budget, jump to Adobe Stock. Another paid one is Shutterstock. Another paid one is iStock. They're all really good. Adobe Stock tends to fit in with Photoshop a little bit better. All right, this is a really long video. We're all ready to get started with Photoshop, and let's actually start making some stuff. All right, let's get into the next video. Hi there, and welcome to the first video. In this video, we're going to look at how layers work in Photoshop. It's quite fundamental. As a bonus, we'll learn the super quick auto fixing photo features in Photoshop. Okay, they're called auto tone, contrast, and color. And what it'll do is it'll help us really just understand layers properly. Okay, you can see my layers over here, and you can see my super awesome adjustments. All right, let's go and do that now in Photoshop. Okay, first thing to do is open the file we're going to be working with. We can do that under File and go to Open. And what you're looking for is the exercise files you've downloaded, okay, and then find a folder called O1 Layers. Open that up, and inside of there should be one called layers.jpg. Click on that and then click Open. All right, so remember this video is going to do a couple of things. It's going to show us how to use layers, which is quite fundamental to Photoshop, but it's also going to introduce one of the kind of most easy photo adjustments you can do in Photoshop. It's using the automatic features. So we're going to learn both of those. So first thing we need to do is we need to make sure we can see our layers panel. If you can't see it, go to Window and make sure there's a little tick next to layers even. I can't see it, there it is. Okay, and make sure he's open. You'll see background. And what I'd like to do is, instead of just like changing this version here, I'd like to create a duplicate of that layer so that I can make an adjustment and then kind of see the difference between the original and the updated version. And that's a really common thing to do in Photoshop. To do that, you right click the word where it says background and say duplicate layer. Okay, now this window appears, and what we'll do is we'll give this a name. Okay, we're going to call this auto tone, and let's click OK. Now what's happened here, can you see down here on my layers panel, nothing really visually has changed on our screen, but you can see down here I have two layers, one called background and one called auto tone. They're both looking the same. What I want to do is do this automatic adjustment, and you can kind of tell which one you've got selected. It kind of goes a lighter gray. So have that selected and go up to image, and we're going to use auto tone. Cool, huh? Okay, so it's one of the really quick, easy things you can do. Open up an image, and if like our original there, if the lights and the shadows and the midtones aren't all quite nice, okay, this automatic feature will go and adjust them. Okay, so that's auto tone. So what we really came here though is to learn about layers. And you can see at the top here, it's a little hard because it's kind of small, but you can see auto tone, you can kind of see the icon or the thumbnail here has changed to this newer version, but you can also see the background has that faded out version. And what we can do, imagine when you're looking at layers, you see the top one first. You imagine you're a bird flying above and you see this one first, and it's blocking out the guy underneath. To turn this top one off and make it invisible, to see the background, see there's this little eye icon here? Just click on him. Okay, and now that one's completely, it can't be seen, completely transparent, and you can see the background underneath. It's just a good way to turn this eye on and off to see whether you've made a good adjustment or a bad adjustment. Okay, you can go back to that original. You haven't wrecked the original either. You can always go back to it if you like. Next thing I want to do is let's turn off the eyeball on auto tone. Let's click the background layer so it goes this lighter gray, and let's duplicate it again. So right click, go to duplicate layer, and let's call this one auto contrast. So we looked at automatic tones. Okay, that's one of the automatic features, and we're going to go through the other two that are quite useful. Okay, real quick and easy as well. So we've got this kind of faded out version. Let's go to image. You can see we've done tone. Let's do auto contrast. Now this effect is definitely better than the original, but probably wasn't as good as auto tone. You can see over here in my layers panel, I've got auto contrast. Let's turn the eyeball off on it so we can compare it to the original. You can kind of see this layer stack here. This one's invisible, so I can't see it. I can turn auto contrast off to see the background. Okay, but if I turn auto tone back on, I'm like, yeah, for me personally, it's hard to see, I guess, when you're watching these videos because color depends on your screen, but you probably notice auto tone's a nicer one. Let's look at the last option and compare which automatic feature we like, all the while getting used to layers. So I'm going to turn the top eyeballs off and have the background selected, right click it, duplicate layer, and this one is called auto color even. Okay, let's click OK. Go up to image, let's go to auto color, and pretty good. Looks pretty close to auto tone. So if I turn auto tone on and off, depending on what resolution you're watching this video in, you might not see very much of a difference. Okay, there's a little slight difference. It's just kind of maybe tonal range. One's a bit more, auto tone's got a warmer feel to it, and auto color has just a tiny green tinge to it. So a couple of things we've learned is let's kind of finish off layers, and then we'll talk about these adjustments and where they're good for. So in terms of the layers, what I'd like you to do is practice turning on, let's say I wanted to just see auto contrast. Okay, so I turn this top one off. Let's see, one of the things I guess I like to ask my classes when they're live is like, hey guys, I'm turning auto color on and off. Why is nothing changing? Okay, and everybody goes, yeah, we know, Dan. And eventually somebody says, it's because this one's on top. Okay, and I guess we're just getting used to this. We're getting started. So, okay, if you can play around with all of these guys underneath and nothing's going to happen because this guy's on top and he's blocking the view of the other things. Now, two other things before we move on from layers is that you can change the order of them. So let's say that you want auto color at the top. What you can do is grab auto color by clicking, holding, and dragging the text here. Drag, drag, drag. See, it turns into like a little fist, like he's grabbing it, and then you'll see a little blue line appear. There it is. So that'll drag it just above contrast. If I keep going, another little blue line up here. If you go crazy, it gets lost. So you just got to kind of drag it and just keep an eye out for those blue lines. So at the top there means auto color's on top. Let's say I want auto tone on top. Let's say auto contrast on top. You get in the swing of it. You can drag it down, you can drag it up, just looking for those blue lines. So the last thing I'd like to mention about layers before we move on is background. Background's special. So when you open up a JPEG or a PNG, okay, often it's called background, and one of the big things is that it's locked. The trouble with that is like, it won't do it, okay? Okay, it doesn't like it. So what we need to do is we need to give it a name. That's the best way to kind of play around with the lock here, okay, or remove the lock. You can double click the word background, okay, and up here, you can give it a name. I'm just gonna call mine original. The cool thing about that is that the lock has been removed. I've never in my life gone, man, I wish that lock was on there. It's always just a pain. So if you're finding like, it's a bit weird, it is a bit weird. I don't know, it's just one of the Photoshop things. Okay, so I've called it original. Now I can move it to the top and do what I like with it. We bring it up here because it's going to become more and more important as we go through the course. There's some things you just can't do the background because it's locked. You could lock it again by clicking this lock icon. We never want to. But yeah, that is it for layers. Now what I will do is, let's turn off the original, is these three here. I don't want you to leave this class thinking, auto tone's always better. Okay, it's not always. This is kind of doing, later on in the course, you'll look at levels. This is what this is trying to do. Auto color is dealing with the hue and saturation. They're just doing it automatically. And the thing is if this was a different image, you might find, because in this case, auto contrast didn't do a great job, right? You might find that it's actually absolutely perfect for the job that you were doing. So I find the auto features is really good when I don't want to do amazing photo retouching. I just want it to be better. Let's say I'm uploading photos to my Facebook or a business web gallery, and I just want them to be better. Okay, so I'm going to open them up in Photoshop, smash away at auto tone because I figured out that was the best one for my kind of photo shoot, and then just keep doing it and saving them so I don't have to go through and do any kind of hardcore adjustments that we're going to do a bit later. Okay, so just quick and easy, but don't think auto tone is better than auto contrast. It really depends on your images. All right, last thing we'll do is we're going to save this file. Okay, so we're going to go to File and hit Save, and something strange is going to happen. It's not going to save it. It was called layers.jpg, you can see in the top left here. But because we've added layers, this is a specific Photoshop feature. Okay, JPEGs can't have layers. So it needs to be saved as a different format. And Photoshop's clever and says you need to be PSD. Now, if you're on a Mac like me, yours might look like this. And that's fine, but see this little icon here? It's just better if it's opened up. Okay, I'm going to make mine a little bit smaller as well. If you're on a PC, it's already open. Okay, so on a Mac, just click that to open it up. And you don't need to change anything. We're going to call ours layers.psd, and all it means is it's going to be very similar to the last one, except it's got this little bit in here. The file size is going to be a bit bigger, but it's great because it's got all this layers that we can go and turn on and off later on. So let's save it as layers.psd and click save. Now this pops up. We might as well cover this here. Maximize compatibility. This is always on. You never want, it just means that this is likely to open in older versions of format. So, older versions of Photoshop. So if you're sending this to somebody who has CS6 or CS5, it's more than likely going to open. The file size gets a tiny bit bigger, but it's not worth turning that off to save the file size because, yeah, it just means somebody might not be able to open it up. You can click don't show again. I can't because I am a trainer and I need to show this to everybody that's new. It's a pain in the bum. Okay, but let's just click OK and ignore that. I'm not going to mention it again for the course. All right, let's go to File, Close, and move on to our next video. Welcome everyone. This video is just going to be an introduction to navigating around Photoshop. We're going to combine these three images, okay, all into this lovely little collage here. We're going to move them around. We're going to resize them. We're going to practice zooming in and out and navigating. No, not super exciting, but super fundamental. Let's get into it now in Photoshop. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up a bunch of files. So let's go to File and go to Open. And what I'd like you to do is in your exercise files, there is a folder called 01 layers. Double click that. Inside of there, we want navigation, and we want navigation 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the images we're going to combine. Now you can open them individually by selecting them, clicking open, but that can get a bit tedious. So what we're going to do is click this first one at the top here, okay, and then hold down Shift on my keyboard, okay, and click the last one, and it should highlight them all. Or open them up individually, whatever works. Let's click open. All right, so in Photoshop, when you've got more than one document open, it transfers them into these tabs along the top here. So click on the tabs, just get used to it. Okay, so those are all the images that I've got open, 4 of them. And what I'd like to do is combine them all into this first image here. So we're gonna start with navigation 2. That's the one that I want to move into this navigation 1 document. Now there are lots of ways of kind of copying images into files and moving them around. But I'm going to show you the way that, I guess it's just kind of future bulletproof. It just works with later on when we get into slightly more complicated things like layer masks and adjustment layers. This technique is still going to work. And the technique is pretty simple. Okay, use the Move tool, okay, which is the first tool in your toolbar here. And all you do is click, hold, drag your mouse, clicking, dragging, okay, drag, 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 drag. Hover above this tab for like a second and then it switches. I've still got my mouse down, still holding, let go. Okay, it's a bit weird. I know, I promise. Okay, I totally understand. So let's give it another practice though. Let's go to navigation 3. Same thing, okay. I'm gonna get my Move tool, click, hold, drag. I'm holding my mouse down, holding my left mouse key down, holding, hovering above the tab and then letting go. That is the technique. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it's going to prove future-proof later on. Let's go to the last one here. Click, hold, drag, 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 hold, let go. Ah, okay. We've got a slight problem with this one's a different size. Now I've resized these first ones just to make life easy, and they fit in here perfectly. But more often than not, you're going to be kind of combining images and they're going to be really different sizes. Sometimes they could be really big, okay? If you've taken them on quite a high-end digital camera, that can be really, really big. So that's going to bring us into some more of the navigation things we need to learn throughout this course. Okay, I'm going to pile them all into here. Don't worry if you're like, oh man, these shortcuts, there's too many. We're going to kind of reiterate these all the way through the course, and you'll find that the ones we cover right now in this video are going to be the ones that you use forever in Photoshop. At least the ones you use the most. Okay, so a couple of things I want to do now is I want to transform this guy here, okay, he's just too big. So what I can do is I've got it selected. I know it's selected because over here in my layers, okay, it's got that gray highlight and I can turn the eye on and off so I know it's the right one. Then go up to Edit and let's go to Transform and let's go to this one that's called Scale. This one you're going to use really often, okay, Edit, Transform, and Scale. And what I'd like to do is, now depending on your screen, you might have to zoom out, okay, especially if it's a really big image. So we're going to learn one of our first shortcuts, okay, for navigation. We'll learn a couple in this course. Okay, and the really common one is if you're on a Mac, hold down the Command key and tap the minus on your keyboard. It's kind of up the top there near your numbers. You'll see that it zooms out. If you're on a PC, hold down the Control key and tap the minus. Okay, so minus zooms out and plus zooms in. So give a practice with that. Hold down Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, and just tap plus to zoom in, minus to zoom out. So minusing is going to allow us to see the edges of this transform box we've got here when we're scaling. Now what we're going to do now is you can move it around by clicking the center. Avoid this little crosshairs in the middle. It's just the center of rotation. It's not something we want to mess with for the moment. So anywhere inside of here moves it around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of like line it up. Photoshop has a really cool tool that's on by default. It's called Smart Guides, and it just says, hey, did you mean lining up with this guy? And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. If yours isn't kind of snapping to the edges like mine, go into View and just check that under Show. Down here, you've got a tick next to Smart Guides. That'll just make sure that's on. Okay, so what I want to do now is resize it. I'm going to grab this bottom corner, just drag it. And what you'll notice is that if I just drag it, it's going to potentially distort it. You could drag it and kind of hopefully get it there. But a nice little trick is while you're dragging it, okay, before you let go, is hold down the Shift key. All right, I'm just going to pause the video here real quickly to explain one small update that's happened in the latest version of Photoshop. So even though I just said in this very video, hold down the Shift key while you're resizing, Photoshop has gone and changed that. So you do not have to hold down the Shift key anymore. It's a small change, and it's actually easier for you because you don't have to remember that Shift shortcut. But you should take a note of this. Write it down. Whenever Dan says hold Shift while resizing, don't do that anymore. So there's a couple of times throughout this course, not many, that I'll say hold Shift while you're resizing, but you know better now. Don't hold Shift, don't do anything. Just drag the edges and it will resize fine. So that's it, let's get started back in the tutorial. Okay, so if yours has all gone a bit wrong, let's hit Escape on your keyboard. That's the I didn't mean it button. Okay, hit Escape, let's go Edit, Transform, go to Scale. Now, when I'm dragging this corner here, hold down the Shift key. So down on your keyboard, hold Shift, grab the corner. And what you'll notice is it locks the height and width. Now we're not looking for perfection yet, just get it kind of close to these other ones. We'll look at doing it perfectly later on, but get it kind of close to the right size. And last thing you need to do when you're using scale is that you need to hit the Enter key on your keyboard. Otherwise, it's kind of halfway through something. See all these dots on the side? It means, hey, I'm busy doing scaling now, you can't do anything else. Because if you go up to your panels along the top here, you see they're all grayed out. It just means you can't do anything until you hit Enter or Return. All right, so let's zoom in. You know what the shortcut is now. Remember, it is Command plus on a Mac or Control plus on a PC. And I want you to go in nice and tight because I want to show you one more shortcut before we go. And that is kind of moving around once you're in this sort of kind of really close. You have to be zoomed right in so that the image goes off the edges. And say I want to go over here to the right. Okay, you can use these little sliders. Okay, this is the caveman way. If you feel like you want to be caveman, you can just drag these little scrubbing things up and down and that totally works. Because you might feel a little overloaded with shortcuts already. So, but if you aren't, I'm going to give you one of the really common navigation shortcuts is that you just need to hold down the spacebar key. So spacebar on your keyboard, you can see my little cursor changes from that little move tool to the little hand, and then just click, hold the mouse and kind of drag it across. Okay, that's going to be it for the basic navigation for Photoshop. We're obviously going to build on these skills later on. So if you feel like, man, I didn't get every single one of those, don't worry, we'll cover them again and again as we move through the course. So just to recap, whenever you need to move one image to another, okay, click on it, grab the move tool, click, hold, drag, wait, drag it down, let go. You often need to resize, okay, and it's under Edit, Transform, Scale. But to make sure the height and width doesn't get all distorted, you hold down, which key was it? It's a test. Say it in your head. Yeah, it's Shift. Okay, Shift just means that the height and width won't get distorted. And remember, when you're finished, you've got to hit the Return key, otherwise life doesn't work. The couple other shortcuts that I jumped to there was the zooming in and out, which is Command plus and minus on a Mac, or Control plus and minus on a PC. And holding down the spacebar allows you to click, hold, and drag and move around. All right, that is going to be it for this video. We're going to get into doing some actual photoshopping in the next video, I promise. So, yep, let's finish it there. I will see you in the next one. Hi there. In this video, we're going to look at something called levels. It's the thing I do the most in Photoshop. I open up an image and I sharpen up the blacks and the whites. Ready, steady. Cool, huh? Here's another example. Looks good, and then bam, looks better. All we're doing is making the blacks and the whites super strong using something called levels. Let's go and do it now in Photoshop. All right, let's get started. So from your exercise files, go to File, Open, and we're working in our exercise files, and we're going to be using O2 color. So double click to go inside there. Inside of here, we're going to open up levels 01. Click open. All right, so first thing is we're going to find this adjustments panel. Okay, so this is where we find a lot of the adjustments we're going to do in this color section. If you can't find it, go up to Window and come down until you find adjustments, and it should have a little tick next to it. Cool, and if you hover above them all, you can kind of see, I can't point to it as well, but you can see the name appears up here, watch. Okay, so the one you're looking for is levels. It's this kind of histogram looking bar chart type thing. Click on him once. Cool, and what ends up happening is nothing. Except to know that we've got this little new layer that we'll talk about in a little bit, and this big ugly thing opens up. Okay, now this thing is simpler than it looks, okay, because let me show you the technique here. Basically, this is all the color information in our document. And you'll notice down the bottom here, there's a black little pointer, there's a kind of a gray one and a white one. Basically what it's showing is that there's no really white information and no really black information. There's a chunk of other stuff. There's quite a lot of light gray. You can kind of see in here, there's a lot of light gray. And even then, that doesn't really matter. Basically, what you want to do is grab the dark guy and drag him to the right. Click, hold, and drag him. How far? Just keep an eye on my image over here. You see the further I drag him, the darker it gets. What we want to do is basically drag him to the kind of first hump. Okay, so halfway up the first little hump here, and you'll notice that if I turn my preview on and off, okay, so my levers layer here, turn the eyeball on and off, it just really sharpens up the shadows or the dark parts. Same with the other side. Grab the white, drag it to the left, and how far do you drag it? Basically just halfway up the first hump. Or at least until you feel like it's looking good, okay? There's no like absolute science here. It really depends on your image, but that's the really good place to start. Drag the both ends in until they're halfway up the hump, and often it'll fix your image. There's no specific way to drag it. It just depends on your image. So I can drag it to the left and it lightens it up, and drag it to the right and it darkens it up. So it really depends where you want it to be. I'm just dragging it back and forth, looking at my image until I find something that I like. Remember, turn the eye on and off. Have I made it better? Have I made it worse? Okay, it's better. It's pretty oversaturated, it's pretty sharp. And that, my friends, is how levels work. And it is the thing I do most often when I open up an image, especially if it's something I've taken myself, and it's a way to kind of really get the rich blacks and the pure whites. And what Photoshop has done is that it's put it on a layer that I can turn on and off. So later on I can come back to this and either make adjustments, okay, or just turn it off and go back to the original. It's very quick, it's very easy. What you're going to do now is a little exercise. Go to File, go to Open, and there's one in there called Levels 2. Now what I've done throughout this course is that if there's ones that I've taken from a website called Unsplash, Unsplash is a cool website for commercial use images that you don't have to pay for. Okay, the only thing that they require is that you leave the artist's name and where it came from. So that's what I'm doing. So this one here came from a paid stock library site. They don't require it. I paid to use it. This one here I didn't pay for, but Matthew Hamilton and his amazing photography just needs to be credited here. Anyway, so open up Levels 2, click Open, go through the same process here. Go to your adjustments panel, find levels, drag the hills in from both sides, the center slider, try left and right depending on what you're looking for, and that will give you some practice with the most common thing to do in Photoshop, in my opinion. And in my current opinion, it is time to get on to the next video. All right, see you over there. Hey there, in this video we're looking to enhance colors. I hate saying the word make colors pop, but that's kind of what we're doing. We're just trying to kind of like lift some of the colors. So we're gonna take this image that we've been working on and really just kind of richen it up, especially the background stuff. This image here, ready, 1, 2, 3. Ooh. Colors are definitely enhanced and maybe some popping going on. Now this technique is after levels is one of the first things I do. So step 2 in my fixing up my images is levels first, which we did in the previous video, and then I look at vibrance just to kind of lift and raise some of the colors without going too far. We might have gone a little too far in this image, but that's okay. Let's learn how to do it now in Adobe Photoshop. All right, to get started, we're going to open up 2 files from that same folder called O2 Color. I've got open Vibrance 01 and Vibrance 02. Vibrance 02 is from Malvestida magazine. Great, so we're going to have Vibrance 1 to start with. And what we're going to do is, in our adjustments panel, we're going to use this one here. It looks like a kind of a V with a gradient in the middle. It's the Vibrance adjustment. Click on that. Now, I just mentioned that vibrance is a good replacement for saturation in most cases. Okay, so if you have dabbled in Photoshop before and you use the hue and saturation slider, okay, saturation is fine, but vibrance is definitely better. Why is vibrance better, in my opinion? Vibrance, what it does is it looks at the image, okay, and let's say the shoes are quite red already, okay, but this kind of colored boards in the background are quite washed out. So what vibrance does is, watch this, if I drag up saturation to the top, kind of to get this really blue color in the background here kind of popping, this red has to be oversaturated, okay, and gets too much. So I'm gonna turn that back to 0. What happens with vibrance is, watch this, when I drag this up, you'll notice that the blue in the background gets better, but it leaves the already saturated colors alone. So it's just generally just a really good, I don't normally drag it up this high. I've got this example just because we've been using it already. Let's have a look at the Vibrance 02. Okay, so same thing. I've got to my adjustments panel, I'm gonna go to the vibrance, and watch what happens when I drag up the saturation. It kind of, like, I'm going way too high, right? I'm going all the way up to 100, but you'll see the greens start getting quite strong and the blues come out of here. Let's go down, up, down, up. Okay, but the problem is these colors that already had quite a strong color in them, okay, they start becoming kind of, I don't know, surreal or hyperreal, just a bit too saturated. So let's leave this here and crank up this vibrance, and you'll notice that the greens are the leaves. You might not notice, so I've got it up to 100 and I'm going to turn the eyeball on and off. You'll notice that like the blue in here really came on strong, which is cool. And the leaves got a warmer kind of green in there, but you'll notice the bag down here, or at least the colors in here in the, I'm going to call it a scarf, they get a little bit more, but not as much as these. So it's more like the already saturated colors just get a little tweak, and the ones that are just quite weak in terms of their color saturation can get it lifted up, okay, to match some of those more saturated colors. All right, that is going to be it for vibrance. You can use both of them, vibrance and saturation, to go completely overboard. But that is it. All right, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, vibrance. Hi there, in this video we're going to change the color of stuff. Okay, so we're going to change it green and make it pink, and then actually pick any color we like. Same with this one here, we've got red shoes and ready, green shoes. All right, it's super quick, it's super easy. We're going to use the hue and saturation adjustment panel. Let's do it now in Photoshop. All right, to get started, let's open up two files. They're in the same color folder we've been working in. Open up Hue 01 and Hue 02. Okay, with Hue 01 open, let's go to Adjustments. And to change the color, we use this one called Hue and Saturation. Click on him. Now what we want to do is under Hue, okay, this hue slider here, grab this little, I call it a little house, white house. Okay, a little arrow thing there, click it, hold it and drag it left. And slowly but surely, see the colors updating. Come on. Okay, drag it all the way to the right as well. Okay, that'll get you through your full range of colors available. And one thing you might do is I'm going to pick any sort of color here. Okay, and the other one you might play around with is saturation. Okay, so they say the color's not quite, poppy enough for you. Click, hold, and drag it up a little bit. I'm going to max mine out. Okay, it goes a bit too high, but you can kind of see I can just raise it up a little bit. Cool. And I want you to do the same thing for, this is the one we worked on earlier for levels. Okay, Hue 02. Do the same thing. Open up Hue and Saturation, drag it around, see if you can change the color. Nice and easy and fun. Just a little side note here is I've worked on a few jobs where I've been in charge of photographing, say, a product. Let's say it was glasses. Okay, so we photographed, there was the same style but a range of colors. So what we did is what everyone does is that you photograph kind of one of them. Okay, say we pick the color red and we photograph it. We get the right angles and we try a few things with lighting. We get it right. And instead of, you know how when you're on Amazon or eBay and you're going through the different color options and somehow magically that shirt or those glasses, they're in the exact same position but different colors. And you're like, how did they line those up and photograph them all perfectly? They didn't. Okay, it was somebody like me who went, yeah, let's just do one. And later on in Photoshop, I'll go and adjust them. And yeah, I sat there with the glasses and went, yeah, the blue color. And then I grabbed the slider and went, and with the blue color. And I'll be looking at the glasses in my hand and looking at the Photoshop and going, yeah, it's close enough. Okay, and it was that. It's like, I feel like it's a confession. Okay, but yeah, that's the easy and quick way. Color matching is super hard regardless, lighting and stuff affect it. And if you, like me, had no budget and just needed to get them done, it's a quick and easy way to adjust the hue. All right, so practice with Hue 02, and I will see you in the next video where we start looking at selectively adjusting the hue. I'll explain more in the next video. Hey there, in this video we're going to change just one particular color in an image rather than the whole thing. See the yellow in the glasses here and the yellow in the shoe? Ready? Hey presto, magic, the green and blue and all sorts of other cool colors. Let's go for pink. Same with this image, Chuck Taylor's, all sorts of cool colors. Okay, and it's only affecting the shoes, not the color in the background. Let's learn how to do that now in Adobe Photoshop. Okay, from the same folder that we've been using called color, let's open up Selective Hue 1 and Selective Hue 02. Okay, and we're going to start with 01. And we're going to go, like we did before, we're going to use the adjustments panel and we're going to go to hue and saturation. Now the problem though is if I use hue, and I just want to change, say, just the shoe here. So I'm going to put it back to 0. Okay, I just want to change just this part, or just let's do the yellow. Okay, the yellow of the sunglasses and the yellow of the shoe here. But to change it, if I want to make it pink, okay, where we go. So the yellow sunglasses are now pink, which is awesome, but everything else has changed color. It's kind of cool, but it's not what we want. We want to just change the yellow. So put him back to 0. And what you do is see this thing that says master, okay? That's doing everything. What you can do is you can be selective about the colors. So you say, I want to just change yellows, please. So click on yellows and start dragging that. And voila, okay, it'll affect just the yellows. Cool, huh? Okay, so now you are going to be pink. Nice. Like always, it's an adjustment layer. I can turn it on and off. I can always go and amend it. Now there will be times where, let's say I want to change just the sunglasses yellow, but not this yellow. That's going to require us to do a selection and a mask, which is a little bit later in the course. Definitely doable, okay? But if you want to change everything that's yellow, super easy, just select it from this drop down and adjust it. I'd like you to practice with Selective Hue 2, okay? Adjust both the background color and the shoes. So reds, and this guy here, I'm giving it away, it's cyans, okay? So do the same thing as we did earlier on. Have a practice, and I will see you in the next video. Hi there, the name of this video is pretty much a giveaway. We're going to turn colorful images into black and white images. But the cool thing is we're going to have lots of control about how it goes black and white. Same with this one, black and white it. Okay, color, black and white. We're even going to add a tint to recolor it. All right, exciting times. Let's get into it in Photoshop. Okay, so to get started, let's file open. And let's open up two files from the color folder. It's called black and white. There is an 01 and an 02. We'll start with 01. Now there's a few ways in Photoshop to make things black and white. The best way, in my opinion, is under adjustments. There's a slider here. Okay, this one here called black and white. Second row down, third one in. Click on that. Again, it's this non-destructive layer, which is cool because you can turn it on and off. And up here, okay, depending on what you last did, okay, you might set it back to default and it's made it black and white. Now, what's cool about this is that it is adjustable. So if I turn this eyeball off, you'll see that this is kind of considered reds, right? But let's say when I convert it to black, it's this gray, but say I want it to be darker. The reds, I can drag this way. You can see you can kind of like, you got more control about it going black and white rather than going full black and white and then trying to fix it with something like levels. You've got this kind of full control here. So you just go through and decide like how you want this thing to do. So let's say I find that too dark. So I'm just going to raise the reds. Okay, I want this color here. What color is it? It is like a cyan. So I'm going to grab the cyan to try and make it lighter. I'm trying to make it a little bit more monochromatic, I guess. So you just work your way through until you find something you're happy with. Now, one little tip for you is this option here. Okay, if you hover above it, it's got a terrible name. Okay, it's got this drag an image and modify slider. Okay, so you can click on this little hand here, and what it allows you to do, instead of having to like work out what color that is, you saw before I turned the eye on and off, I'm like, you're cyan, you're magenta, and then turning it back on and trying to adjust them here, you can actually just drag on this. So I've got this selected, goes a darker color, and let's say I want to darken up this, I click, hold with my mouse, drag it right to make it lighter, drag it left to make it darker. So often this is just easier. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of just drag them around. Maybe the background needs to be a little bit lighter. So it picks the colors for you. Say this guy here, I want you to be a bit darker to match this. Now, obviously the colors are being used in more than one place. So you will find that, okay, you might have to rob this one and kind of deal with the consequences where the color's being used over here as well. Later on when we get into masking, you will be able to kind of just work on a particular object. But for the moment, we're just doing some adjustments, clicking, holding, and dragging. Let's jump to the second example, do the same thing, and I'll show you one last trick. So adjustments, we're gonna go to black and white. I love this little inky stuff in water. We'll use this a little bit throughout the course, but I'm introducing it now mainly because I am sick of looking at shoes. Okay, I've decided for a shoe theme for this course. And I kind of regret it. We're only at like video 10. So now we've got ink and water, and what we're going to do the same thing as before. We can just adjust these, okay, but it's probably easier to click on this and say, because you see there's like two main colors in this ink splodge thing. Okay, so I'm going to turn them on, and you can just kind of start dragging. And let's say I want to make it everything darker, so I'm just dragging it to the left, okay, and it just kind of picks what colors. Okay, work around, maybe a bit too dark down here. Okay, so that on art dragger thing is pretty cool. I turn it off. The thing I wanted to show you was this thing here called tint. We kind of looked at something called colorize when we did hue and saturation. This thing here works the exact same way. It's just a handy way of doing it. Black and whiting it in one color and going to tint. And this color here is the color it's been applied. So it's got the sepia old world color now. I can click on this and you can pick any color you like. So you drag this hue slider up and down to find the kind of color range you want. Let's say I want kind of a warm pink. Click OK. And now when I go to my little on art slider here, I'm going to decide to drag it so it's just a bit brighter. Cool, huh? So it's a good way of, you're meant to be using it just to tint it, but we've totally colorized this thing here. So there's the extra little tip. And that is it. Black and whiting is pretty easy. You get a bit of control, a little bit of extra adjustment with this little slider, and you can tint it if you need to. And always, it's non-destructive, so this thing is just underneath, ready to go. You can delete this layer by clicking it, and see this little trash can down here? You can delete him. I'm super happy with myself, so I am going to leave it here, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Hey there, it is gradient time, and what we want to do is this image here, we've added this cool retro kind of style gradient. I'm going to show you how to do that now in Adobe Photoshop. Let's go. First up, let's open up two images. Okay, it's in the same color folder. It's called Gradient 01 and Gradient 02 from Jordan Andrews. Thank you, Jordan. So we're going to start with Gradient 01. We're going to do two things. We're going to add gradient to text, and we're going to add it to the image in the background. We'll do the text first as it's the easiest to do. Okay, so we're going to have a full section on doing type a little bit later in the course, but for now, click on this capital T, your type tool, click once on your keyboard, okay, and over here, in terms of the font size, pick a font, any font you like, okay, and a size, I've got mine up to about 80, okay, yours is probably defaulting to 10 or 12, and over here, okay, we're going to type in all. I'm going to put a return in, start. Don't worry too much about type at the moment. To move your type around, we're going to use our move tool, okay, and I'm just going to click and drag it around. So adding a gradient to this, changing the color of the font's easy. You can double click it here, pick a new font, but let's look at adding a color. Okay, to do it, you need your text layer selected. There's mine. It's got the gray box around it. And down the bottom here, there's one called Effects, and there's one in here called Gradient Overlay. Now what you'll find in Photoshop is that pretty much true of everything you do in Photoshop. There's like 3 or 4 different ways of doing the same thing. What I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to give you, I guess, like there's about 3 different ways of applying gradients. This way I feel like is the most bulletproof in terms of future proofing. Just means it's going to work probably on most circumstances, whereas some of the other gradients don't work in all cases. Anyway, what I'm saying is that later on you might go, hey, why didn't he show me that version of this thing? And you like it better. It's totally cool. Do it. If you stumble across a different way of doing something, totally. There's nothing right or wrong about it. I'm just trying to, I guess, cut it down to the most usable versions. So, gradient overlay. And by default, it'll depend on what you last had selected. Now, what we're going to do is where it says gradient, click on this little arrow here. Let's move them up so we can kind of see. Click on this little drop down arrow. By default, you've got some horrific drop shadows. Okay, gradients, sorry. Okay, some terrible ones. If you need rainbow colored gradients, you, my friends, are all in luck. Okay, so what we're going to do is have to go and customize it. So let's start with this first one, black to white. It's the easiest one to customize. Let's click on the little arrow to pop it back up. So what we want to do now is change the colors used, and you do it by clicking in this color bit here. That's why it's a little bit confusing using gradient overlay. Okay, so you click on this anywhere in this color box, this thing pops up. Okay, and what we're going to do is use the bottom parts of these houses. Okay, so not the top parts, use this bottom bit. So let's double click this first color swatch. Okay, and using this hue slider, drag it up, drag it down, find a color that you want to use. Okay, I'm going to use this one, click OK. Double click this white house. Same thing, drag this hue slider up and down until you find a color you want to use, then click in here. Okay, and you'll have that blue to purple, or at least magenta. Click OK. Well, let's click OK again and have a look at some of the settings. So where it says reverse, just flips it top to bottom. We are using the linear style, so it goes in a line from top to bottom. You can adjust that, which angle. Okay, you can see now it's going kind of more left to right from this side to this side. You can decide any size. Linear, you can play around with radial, and you can experiment on your own, the different ones, angle, reflection, just kind of different ways you can see the gradients are on both sides. We're just going to go for linear in this case. And in terms of the scale, you can lower it down, it makes a bit more sense. And then it's just got like only a tiny little gradient between these type here. Cool, I'm gonna leave mine at 100%. That's what yours is probably set to. Now, before we do the images, I'm gonna show you gradients are kind of back in, right? When I guess, not even that long ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, gradients, I didn't even have in the class because who used gradients? So gradients have come around full circle and are super cool now, right? Or at least I think so. So where I get my gradient colors from, I'm going to show you a cool little site. It's this site here, it's called Gradient. I love it. All it does is just show you examples of cool gradients. And yeah, once you've found one you like, let's say we click through here. Okay, you can see there's a bunch of different options. Okay, I like on page 2 this one here. It's my favorite one. You'll probably notice it from other videos that I've made, but this is where I get my colors from. Now, to get those colors into Photoshop, the easiest way is see down the bottom here. There's this yellow and pink. So those are the two colors, right? If you click on it, okay, that is the number you want. It's this hash, and then it's got some letters and some numbers. So just copy that on your keyboard. So on my Mac, it's Command C to copy, or you can right click and go to copy. Jump back into Photoshop. And in Photoshop, remember when we clicked on to change color, it's that big color bar there. Double click the green, blue house. And this is where it goes down here. I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to paste everything. I don't think we need the hash. It doesn't seem to mind it at all. You can see the hashes over here. So that's an easy way to pick a color from the internet, is using these letters and numbers. Let's click OK. I'm going to jump back into Gradient. Grab this end here. Grab this. I'm going to leave the hash off. Copy it. Back to Photoshop. Double click this house. Grab him. Paste this one. I love those colors. I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. You can make any last adjustments, but that's it for, it doesn't really matter what it is. And we've done it for type. I'm going to click OK, but it doesn't really matter what the layer is. There's a little adjustment we need to do for images, but if it's a logo you've brought in or a shape from somewhere you've made in Illustrator or brought in, or drawn it with the shape tool, which we'll look in a second to do, you can just have it selected, down at effects and go to gradient overlay. Now the next thing I want to do is this image in the background, and there's a slightly different process, okay? Because first of all, if I click on background, this effects is grayed out. And this is going to happen throughout our Photoshop course where you just, it's locked, okay? And it's called background. To unlock the background, double click background, okay? Give it a name, okay? Mine is shoes. And now it becomes unlocked and I get to add that effects. Okay, so that's half of the thing we need to do. Now click on effects, make sure that layer is selected, and go to gradient overlay, just like we did before. The only trouble is, it's kind of doing exactly what happened here, but I can't see the image. So what ends up happening is you need to, we've talked about all of this stuff. It's this one here, blending mode. Okay, blending mode is a way of this gradient blending with the image itself. Okay, so click on normal and just dissolve does nothing. Darken does something. Okay, and you're just gonna have to work your way through until you find a blend that works with your particular gradient and the colors in your image. Now there's no like absolute one you should pick from this. It really depends on your image and the colors in your gradient. So it's a bit of a lottery. Okay, so click on multiply, see if that works for you. And I'm just gonna work way through until I pick something that I like. I'm gonna turn the opacity back up. Color burn, linear burn. You're just gonna watch me now go through them all. Lighten I kind of like. It's kind of got that retro 80s, but in that kind of hipstery way. It's hard to explain, right? But gradients are cool now. Lighten, I know screen's kind of a nice one. Color color dodge, not so good. Okay, I'm not going to go through every single one of them because I decided I either liked hard light or I liked screen, and that's totally, sorry, lighten. That's totally just based on my gradients and my images, and I'm going to leave it there. So that's the difference between doing images and just say straight off text or shape. Okay, is that first of all, you need your layer unlocked. Then you add the effect like you do normally, and just make sure when you do add your gradient, you change that blending mode. Oh, before I go, probably super important point that I haven't brought out yet is say you want to adjust this gradient now. Okay, I'll turn it off. See All Star here? You can kind of see the structure. That's my whole layer, and these are the effects. Okay, I can turn either the effect or the gradient itself off to show through that original red color. Okay, so what we can do to edit it, so to turn it off, that's all you need to do. Just leave it there. Okay, but to edit it, I'm going to have the eyeball on, double click the word gradient overlay, double click. Okay, and you'll see it's gray here and it's got a little tick. Okay, you might be accidentally on something else, so I'm going to untick that, make sure this is gray. Okay, and that's where you can go and make adjustments. So let's say that I don't like that anymore, so I'm going to reverse it or play with a different blending mode as well. Okay, but that's how you make adjustments. Okay, I'm probably going to turn it off and make this back to white. Okay, so text selected, my little properties panel here would tell me what color that I'm using. I clicked on it, and to get white, just as a little other thing before we go is, watch this, any of these hues, it doesn't matter. If I click, hold, and drag, and I'm dragging kind of past where I need it, because up in the top left is white and down in the bottom left is black. So what I do is instead of trying to like, some people like just try and click in there and you get it pretty close. But if you click, hold, and drag past, so I'm holding my mouse down and dragging it past, that assures it's white. All right, I'm gonna click OK. And if you want to tidy this effects up, so I've turned it off so you can't see it, but say that you're pedantic and you've got a bit of OCD and you want to get rid of this, you can click, hold, and drag it to this trash can, and that will get rid of it. All right, so it's project time. I'd like you to practice using this one here. Okay, so I don't mind what text you use, but definitely play around with the gradient, okay, on the image. Okay, go to gradient, pick a color, pick your own colors. You can do your own colors. And I'd like to actually see it this time though. You've been following me along. What I'd like you to do is I'd love to see your own one. So dig through your files and see if you can find an image that you're happy to share. Okay, and it can be your family, it can be your house, you can take a quick photo now of yourself, okay, and just, I want to see what kind of gradients and stuff you're doing. And you can either post it here on this page, or you can share it with me on social media. On Instagram is bring your own laptop, okay, or on Twitter it's Dan Loves Adobe. Either way, do an image, can be this one, it can be your own one, and I'd like to see what you've done. All right, that is going to be the end of this one. Let's jump into the next video. I'll see you over. Bye. Hey there, in this video we're going to create a document of a specific size. In this case it's going to be a postcard, but you can do the same thing for US letter or A4, A3. It's a great way of getting started on a specific size, ready to go for your project. All right, let's learn how to do that now in Photoshop. All right, to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new page and bring our image into it. I find that so much easier. It doesn't matter whether you're new or advanced, it's just easier to do it that way rather than, let's say, opening up the image, okay, and then going to image and go to canvas size and then kind of cropping it down and which way does it crop, and that's a way of doing it, but I'll show you this sneaky way. It's a little bit easier. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to go to File and we're going to go to New. I find it's better to create a document the right size and then drag our content into it. Now in this new document window, you can totally just like start typing sizes and resolution, okay? You can change it from inches to pixels to millimeters. Up the top here are some handy presets. So I can go to photo and I've got my kind of traditional photograph ratios. I've got print, there's my US and A4 sizes. Now just know that there's this little thing that says view more, because there's all sorts of stuff all tucked in there. Art and illustration web. And the one we want a postcard, and this is hidden under art and illustration. You can see him there. Click on him. Now, just so you know as well, this is the US size for postcards. Postcards, turns out weirdly, as I've moved around the world, aren't the same size like business cards. They're all different in different parts of the world, which is kind of weird. But anyway, 4 inches by 6 inches. I want mine to be landscape. Okay, and we're not gonna just leave everything here matching mine, the resolution the same and the color mode. We'll talk about those a little later in the course. They're boring, not boring, but we'll do them a little bit later. So yours looks like mine. Let's click create. Great, so there's my postcard. First thing we want to do is we want to go to file and try and save it. Weirdly in Photoshop is one of those little weird things where it won't let you save it. It's basically saying like you haven't done anything. Nothing worthy of saving, at least. I don't know why. So you can either do something like grab the type tool and start typing, or just go to file, save as. You end up at the same place. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put mine on my desktop. I'm going to call mine All-Star Postcard. All-Star Postcard. Now at the end here, I like the V system, V1, V2, V3. Never call it draft or final. Final is like the kiss of death. If you call it final, you'll be calling it final 2. Some of you are laughing because that's what you do. I do it too. V1, V2 works for me, and I'm going to click save. Next thing I want to do is I want to bring in my gradient kind of background thing. And so I'm going to open up the file I was working with earlier. So say you are following along with this course, you might have a file saved somewhere neatly, okay, that's got this gradient that we worked on in the last video. Okay, if you don't, you can go to File, Open, and open up under Exercise Files, under Shapes, O3 Shapes. There's one called Gradient Image, just to save you in case you forgot to save it. I'm using this original one. Okay, it's got text and stuff on here. What I want to do is I'm going to click on the word shoes, okay, or whatever that layer is. I'm going to grab my Move tool, okay, click, hold, and drag. I'm going to move it, holding, and drag it down here. Why I find this easier is, can you see it's actually not the right size? Okay, I find it's just easier to do this and maybe transform it. So with it selected, edit, transform, scale, and I can see it's just a little too big, so I can hold down shift and it's still the wrong proportion. So I'm gonna kind of leave it there and holding shift on the corners and get it to the right size. All right, friends, that is how to create a document. Doesn't really matter what you're doing. We just did a postcard, but you can do anything. And I find it's easier to like bring everything you need into it and resize it to what you need, knowing that it is ready to go. All right, let's get into the next video. Hi there, in this video we're going to make shapes and more shapes and other shapes and it's a rectangle with a corner on it, there's a star with another star. Oh, it is shape-tastic. Let's get in there now and learn how to do this properly in Photoshop. All right, to get started, basically we're going to be using this little menu item here. So I click, hold, and drop it down. Okay, so I just click, hold my mouse key down until I get these options. Let's start with the ellipse tool. Okay, and what we're going to do is up the top here, you can pick a fill for your ellipse. So give it a click and then pick anything you like. If you want to pick a more custom color than just the random ones in here, you can click on this little kind of rainbow icon here. And you get that color picker that we've used a few times. Okay, slide the hue up until you find something you want to use. Pick this one, click OK. Cool, and you can kind of just click anywhere up here to get rid of that fill drop down. Great, so what we want to do is click, hold, and drag, okay, and you'll get kind of any old shape. So if I go to edit, step backwards, and what we want to do is, we did this with the rectangle marquee tool. Who remembers what key we hold down on our keyboard to get it to go like, to be a perfect circle? Yep, you remember, it's shift. Okay, so if I hold shift down, okay, it just kind of makes the height and width locked in. Okay, if you get it to a size and you're like, well, it's not quite right, you don't have to keep going back. You can go to edit, transform path, and go to scale. Okay, and the same thing, hold down shift on one of these edges, drag it out, and you can make it nice and big. I'm making mine super big. Something like that. When you're finished, hit return on your keyboard, otherwise it doesn't work. So hit return, yeah, that's how to draw an ellipse. The cool thing about using this particular tool here, they're called shape paths, is that they are scalable, they are vector, they can go up and down in size, no problem. Let's look at some of the other shapes. We're going to use a rectangle. It seems pretty boring, but hold on because there's some things you can do with it.